The neon light of James Games flickered against the damp pavement, casting a long, violet glow over the asphalt. This wasn't just an arcade, it was a fortress, a legendary castle built from rows of upright cabinets, clacking buttons, and the heavy, electric hum of cathode ray tubes. In the old days, it had belonged to the Dark Prince. But the prince had long since laid down his crown, whispers echoing through the circuits that he had packed his bags, fled the country, and sailed across the Pacific to start anew in the Philippines. In his absence, a new sovereign had risen to hold the fortress. Mike Chaos ruled James Games not with an iron fist, but with the chaotic, unpredictable wisdom of a true veteran. He was their general, their king of the arcade floor, holding the stomping grounds down against any threat. Into this temple of gaming walked Chaos, moving quiet and deliberate, trying to find himself among the glowing screens. He was searching for something deeper, wandering the rows to study the old master techniques, absorbing every frame and frame trap he could find. He wasn't alone in his pilgrimage. Servbot made the trek over frequently, traveling from his own stomping grounds in San Bernardino to absorb the sacred knowledge of the arcade. Day after day, Servbot stood side by side with Mike Chaos, studying the craft, learning the subtle nuances of high-level play, and soaking in a little bit of Chaos's relentless energy. Deep inside the glowing rows, the training sessions grew intense. Mike Chaos stood over the line of players, his arms crossed, watching their execution with a critical eye. He knew the looming threat of the East Coast tyrant wasn't a game. He pulled Servbot aside, dissecting his foot sweeps, his spacing, and his neutral game with brutal honesty. "Look at your feet," Mike Chaos barked, his voice cutting sharply over the cacophony of button mashing and game audio, a mix of strict discipline and simmering frustration. "You're moving like molasses. You need to be faster. You need to be stronger. If you keep playing this sloppy, Wong will dismantle you in seconds flat. He won't even break a sweat taking your quarters." Servbot stumbled back slightly, wincing at the harsh rebuke, but desperately trying to process the heavy critique. Nearby, taking a brief pause from the grueling pace, Chaos stood close by, keeping his ears open while pretending to study a cabinet screen. Servbot wiped some sweat from his forehead, looking over at Chaos. "Hey," Servbot whispered, keeping his voice low so the general wouldn't snap at them again. "Did you hear about those unaligned players that are coming out of nowhere? They all rolled over to the Central Valley recently." Chaos nodded, keeping his eyes locked on the glowing CRT monitor. "Yeah, I heard about them," Chaos replied quietly. "They met up with John Choi and Duck Vader at the round table. They had to figure out who their king was going to be so they could officially join the coalition." "Oh yeah?" Servbot asked, leaning in. "Who'd they end up picking?" "Yeah, I heard that it's VDO now," Chaos muttered, keeping his voice steady. "They all unanimously chose him to lead their districts." Unbeknownst to them, Mike Chaos had drifted over, silently looming right behind them, his arms crossed as he overheard every single word of their conversation. Mike Chaos let out a sharp, grounding breath, his stern gaze locking onto both of them. "That's good information," Mike Chaos interrupted, his voice dropping into a low, commanding rumble that brooked no argument. "It's smart to know who's marching on our side. But intel doesn't win matches. Frame data and execution do." He pointed a heavy finger back toward the cabinets, his face tightening with fierce authority. "Now get your ass back to work." Before either of them could utter another word, the heavy glass door of the arcade swung open, letting in a sharp gust of wind as Duck Vader stepped inside. Even the Sovereign of the South recognized the gravity of James Games, making his way through the dimly lit aisles to consult with the leadership as the sharp echoes of Mike's training bounced off the walls. Under the neon glow, surrounded by the ghosts of cabinets past and the heavy presence of Mike Chaos driving his students to their absolute limits, the path forward was being forged one quarter at a time,